Welcome, Sister to Sister 2.0 audience. Today we are here with the iconic, legendary Jamie Foster Brown, founder of Sister to Sister magazine and civil rights activist. We also have with us today Walter Hawk Newsom, who is the founder of Black Lives Matter of Greater New York. Today we're having a discussion about everything that is going on now as far as George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, the protests, the riots, and more importantly, where do we go from here? Jamie and Hawk, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm glad we got Hawk here.
Oh man, I'm honored to hear your presence.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
I want to start out today's discussion with Jamie. Jamie, my generation, we've heard about the civil rights movement of the 60s. I know that you were heavily involved in that. Can you tell us what is different now with the protests that are going on today as opposed to the protests that were going on back in the 60s?
Today is worldwide. Today is white folks, honey. Today is everybody, whereas before it was just black people, angry black people marching and being, throwing bricks at us. It was very, very dangerous. Back there, the cops would come into the house and grab the mother and the grandmother out of the house and leave the 2-year-old baby in the house by itself, coming out crying and wouldn't care. I mean, it was very dangerous. Oh, we had guns. We were so scared. I had never thought about having a gun. I lived in Chicago, but I was down in Birmingham, Alabama. And things were worse there sometimes than Mississippi. So for me to see what we're doing today worldwide, I lived in Sweden. I get phone calls from the Swedish people talking about, we're out here marching for you guys. That's a big difference. It's the world sees us. The world sees what's been done to us, and I think that's a big step forward for us.
Right, but you were involved, or the Black Panthers, they were heavily involved in the civil rights movement.
I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm at the airport along with Eldridge Cleaver's wife, Kathleen Cleaver, who the FBI was following everywhere because they didn't know where he was, and they were trying to find him. And I happened to be in the same place where she was. They followed me because I was tall and I was light skinned and I was thin and I had a big afro. And so what happened after that was that once they found out who I was, they were all in. My parents, my grandparents, they were calling my sister, my boss, everyone. It was like, they were just like, who is she? And it was like an effort they felt that I was a decoy. So it was a very scary time at that time. So what Hawk is, when I heard that he's going to be doing, reliving or bringing up the Black Panthers again, I'm curious to know how he's going to do that today.
Absolutely, Hawk. We go from the 60s to the 2000s to 2020. And I can't believe that we're still doing the same thing, basically.
Absolutely.
Today. It's a different movement. It's a different generation. Talk to us about that.
Wow. I'd just like to say, I was raised, I grew up watching, stories about the Black Panthers, right? And we were always told that Martin Luther King was the premier civil rights activist, right? And he was great. He was a blessing. He was a godsend. But what they didn't teach us about was Malcolm X or the Black Panthers. I got that at home from my parents who met at a civil rights rally in New York City, right? At a school walkout. So when I began to watch how things developed and understand strategy, I understood the effectiveness of the Black Panther Party. And we're just trying to build upon what those folks did before us, trying to take that blueprint, because it was effective, and make it work. So when COVID-19 started, we put demands on the government because we saw just through social media and our timelines like, wow, there's a lot of Black folk dying out here. So we demanded that the governor release the information on how many Black folks were dying, you know, data by race. We demanded that, since we knew the answer to the question, that resources be reallocated to our communities. We also demanded that police not enforce social distancing because they are brutal, and that money should go to civic organizations so that they can tell our people, hey, do me a favor, put your mask on. They ignored us, and that letter went out April 7th. To date, they've done everything we've asked, right? So on a personal level, we started calling people in our community and saying, hey, are you okay? Do you need groceries? And we launched something called the People's Food Program, kind of like the People's Free Food Program. But what we started doing was delivering 2 days worth of groceries, 9 items. And if you're a poor folk, you could, you know what I'm saying? You can make that stretch for 2 days. You know how to make things stretch as people. And we started delivering that to 150 houses a day. In those 150 houses, you had 2, 3, 4, 5 people. So, and you know, we delivered it. So we started feeding 400 or 500 people a day. And all that money came from the streets, came from social media. There was not one government dime. There was not one corporate dime that helped us with this initiative. So right now, as we move forward and we see our brothers and sisters being killed in the streets, we used to do something called cop watching, right? And that's what the Panthers started. And we actually had a television show on BET called Cop Watch America. But what we're launching this Sunday is a new organization called Black Opportunities. And within that organization, we have something called Black Ops, in which we train our people to go out and police the police in our communities and in places where people have licenses to carry, our people will be armed out there. Because I'll be damned if we sit by and watch another one of our brothers or sisters be choked to death, right? If they're beating us and trying to kill us, somebody has to intervene. And that's only self-defense. A news site ran a story, said that we were declaring war on the police. It's amazing how we're defending our communities to war on the police, right? Anytime Black people do something, it's always escalated to make us seem extra violent. And what we come up with is a agenda that's based off the 10-point program that the Black Panthers had. And what's truly tragic is a lot of those demands haven't been met yet. You know,
the Black Panthers fed children. I mean, they did so much more than people think about. Oh, they're militant. They were taking care of their communities. That's what. But you have to be careful now how they put us in a box that they want us to be in, so it scares white America. So you were talking to Tommy, what's her name? Fox. Yes, yeah. Someone to me that had totally no understanding. I appreciate that you had a lot of patience with her, because you do have to have patience with them. She has no understanding of what's going on in our community and what you're trying to do.
Absolutely, and she's not an intelligent woman at all. You know, and it's interesting with those Republican commentators. They know how to drive home points and they know how to argue. But once you start getting into facts, they have no idea what they're talking about. So, you know, you see me in my baseball hats and my T-shirts and my tattoos. But what they don't see is my business degree, and they don't see my law degree. So they think I'm some dumb Black man. You know what I mean? Who just showing up to their show with no education, and then, you know, you present your arguments rationally, and then they can't contend with them.
So I just want to touch on that. And then we also have coming into our discussion Todd Hollis, who is a nationally renowned civil rights attorney out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Todd, welcome.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
So Hawk, let me just backtrack a bit. You started the Black Lives Matter in the greater New York area. There has been so much misinformation that has been disseminated about the Black Lives Matter movement itself. Can you just clarify for us exactly what this movement stands for?
The liberation of Black people. We have guiding principles, but you need to know that there's a Black Lives Matter Global, which has 33 chapters. And then there's the Black Lives Matter movement as a whole, which has 400 different chapters. And it's intentionally fragmented, right? So that there's no core leadership, so that, you know, the law enforcement would have a harder problem picking us off, to be perfectly honest. And there are folks out here who are doing the work, right? It's liberation work. Some chapters are more active than others, like Black Lives Matter LA. They just made the mayor defund the police, which is huge. He just cut $150 million from their budget, right? And there's there are organizations who are truly strategic. You know, we struck a deal with the governor of New York, wherein we got voting rights for 36,000 formerly incarcerated people who were on paper. We got them a partial pardon. We've been responsible for influencing law here in our state. We made the mayor back off of the NYPD's practice on social distancing. And it's, for us, it's all about strategy.
Right. And back to your point about voter registration, I'm in Houston, and I know Trey the Truth, civil rights activist and rapper, has just started that same initiative to make people aware, if you have been convicted of a felony and you have completed your sentence, your parole, or your house arrest, that you are eligible to vote.
Amen.
Amen. So let's get that word out there. And I want to go back to Jamie. back to Jamie. What is different from the message that was being sent out in the 60s to the message that is being sent out today? Is there a parallel?
That really, it was sort of the same thing. I mean, when I was dealing with the Panthers, I mean, he cares about our children, how we're going to raise them, how to feed them, how to empower our families. The same thing. It's the same thing. The carrying guns. We have that right. That's one of the things. Black people back then were like, oh no, we don't want to have a gun because we don't know that they'll react to that. They'll shoot us on sight, that sort of thing. So we're braver today. We're more learned today. We know how to use the law today. So before we didn't know what to do. We really didn't know. We're just figuring it out as we went along. But I see that there's a lot of thought behind this. There's a lot of programs behind this. This is what we need. And we operated out of anger. We have to be strategic. We have to know how to talk to one another, how to love one another and listen. You know, we're hotheads. You can't be a hothead. You have to figure things out before you say anything, so it makes a difference, because you're trying to teach as you go along also. You're bringing people along as you're learning. So I really applaud what you're doing, Hawk. This is uplifting to me.
Absolutely. So I want to bring Todd into this discussion now from a civil rights attorney perspective. What are you dealing with on the legal side of this whole movement, police brutality, excessive force, deaths? What are you seeing on your end?
Problem that we're having now is the same problem that we've had for the last 20 years. It's qualified immunity. Even when you have video, even when it's glaring, police officers are being protected by the courts because qualified immunity says, one, a reasonable police officer would have to know that his conduct is excessive.
Right.
It's kind of like a negligence standard, in regular common law, but in the federal courts it's different. So the argument or the defense, that's being brought by the city is always, well, he didn't know, right? Well, how did he not know that choke slamming, somebody was violative of that person's, civil rights. So even when it's glaring, even when there's video, even when there's concrete evidence, the courts are not making the officers accountable. And even if you get a lawsuit, I'm talking about a civil lawsuit.
Civil, okay, I wanted to clarify that also.
So even if I get a civil lawsuit against such and such a borough, the police officer is not going to be held personally liable. So more likely than not, the borough is going to reimburse the police officer for his conduct. So John Doe police officer never bears any responsibility for his actions. Right. So therefore, what is the impetus for that conduct to stop? Right?
Right.
And when we file these things, we're essentially filing them to the very legal system that's protecting them. And unless unless your situation, whatever that you got into, unless it has video or some real concrete way of identifying that your rights may have been violated, there's only a few civil rights attorneys in each city. There's not a whole lot, particularly in Pittsburgh, maybe 5, maybe, right? So we're already overwhelmed. We're taking on the cases that we know that we can prove. Because if we have to put $30,000 into a case, we better win.
Right.
So that means that out of the hundreds or thousands of cases that may come up any year in any particular city, I mean, we're not a large venue, but we're probably one of the mid-sized cities. So LA, New York, Chicago, I mean, they're going to have numbers that far exceed ours.
Right.
So that there's only so many lawyers that can take on those cases. So that means a great number of those cases are not even being addressed. So it's a problem.
Absolutely. And I know just from the criminal side, we've seen these officers be charged, go to trial, and then been found not guilty. We saw that in Baltimore. I mean, we've seen that in a number of instances. And Hawk, you just informed us that you have a law degree, correct?
Yes.
Do you want to speak to that issue?
I've been dragged out of courtrooms because I cursed out the judge, the jury, and the prosecutors, because we've seen cases in New York City where the evidence was compelling. And these cops either get out-lawyered or they have a friendly judge, or in one case, Brother Todd, a brother named Akai Gurley was shot in the staircase by an officer who wasn't supposed to be in that staircase, who wasn't supposed to have his gun drawn, and he accidentally fired his weapon, and Akai Gurley died. He was found guilty of manslaughter, and the district attorney in New York recommended no jail time. Never in the history of Black people have we been convicted of a crime of that nature, something that serious, that malicious, that egregious. And a district attorney said, I recommend no jail time. But this is the society that we live in. I think it's due to lack of organization. Now, what we're proposing in New York, what we proposed the day we left to go to Minnesota to protest, was something called the I Can't Breathe Act, where in which if an officer sees someone in medical distress, or they verbalize it in the form of I can't breathe, and that officer doesn't get immediate medical attention, and if the officer doesn't disengage, then he'll be faced with a felony. If the person dies, we want that officer charged with murder. And we're trying to find the requisite mens rea to where we can make that, you know what I mean?
Right.
Give that officer the mental state.
Right.
To commit murder.
Mens rea, you said it correctly.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the question that I have for both of you. A lot of this goes back, or like you just said, Hawk, to the prosecutors. Well, your prosecutors are elected. So if you're not out voting and casting your vote as to a prosecutor, a district attorney, that's the name of the person that, or the title of the person that you would be voting for. How do we get people into qualified people who are willing to do their job for all of the individuals who they represent in that area. How do we get those people into office unless we vote? That's where you're going to have the people out there representing the people as far as trying to pursue convictions of these officers or individuals who commit these crimes.
Can I speak on that?
Yes.
I haven't been here as long as the other members of the panel, and I appreciate you allowing me to be here.
We appreciate your being here.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. My respect to the hard work that you've put in, Ms. Foster. God bless you.
Thank you.
You're truly a trailblazer. But I agree. I mean, we have to vote. We have had a district attorney here in our city who has been serving for almost 20 years. During that 20 years, we have had at least 3 individuals die as a result of police misconduct. Not one police officer has been convicted.
Right.
I know that he is probably going to stay a district attorney for almost as long as he wants to, because the police unions are so strong that we, for whatever reason, cannot get the police unions to vote individually. The police unions take their block of votes and they vote in whatever way that they believe they're going to be most protected.
Right.
So,
Hawk, do you want to speak to that point?
Well, I mean, I believe that right now, and some people might get offended. Some of your viewing audience might be offended, but I see no difference in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party right now. You have the Republicans who say, you can't sit at my table. And then you have the Democrats who say, you can sit at my table, but you got to wait. And while you're waiting, go out and make a little noise, go and sing, go and protest, and wait for a seat at this table. So what I contend is that until we get our people, real grassroots people who didn't grow up in that establishment, who don't play the game, the politics of the future, the politicians of the future are not wearing suits right now. Those people have bandanas over their faces. They got on black jeans, black t-shirts. They got their fist in the air saying black power. Those are the people we need to represent our community.
Right.
Why? Because we don't take money from real estate developers, gentrification.
Exactly.
We don't take money from corporations, straight selling our communities out. And we know there's leaders out there who are corporately sponsored. And if you are sponsored by somebody, you are reliant upon them and you will never truly go after them. And for the same reason, we don't take political money. Like, we are grassroots and funded by the people. Right now, my sister, Shavonna Newsom, there's a really awesome article that came out about her in Elle magazine yesterday. Shavonna Newsom, the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York, is running for Congress in our district. If she wins, she'll be the first Black woman ever to hold their seat. It's all about power for us. You got to put power in the streets, power in the halls of legislation. Did y'all know that there's not one Black congressperson in the Bronx or Harlem? Zero representation.
Wow.
Zero representation. And they tell us things like, this is a Latinx seat. Or they tell her, well, somebody told her to go back in the kitchen. Go back in. You know what
I want to go to Jamie now. I know that you're up in that area. Can you speak to that point?
I think that up here, I'm in a very, very stressed, distressed area, in Harlem, and they're right outside. They're right outside my window. They're drinking. They don't even have masks on. They, they don't know. It's a big disconnect. So not everybody. I'm not saying everyone got Hawk, but one of the things that I'm thinking about, and I think like this, is that you guys are out there with no coverings, and we have this pandemic, and yet we could not. Half of us could not be here when it's election time. Right. If we're not I mean, I'm just thinking if we're not careful about, we have to protect ourselves, protect our homes as we're moving forward, Hawk, you know, so that we can think here, local, think in the home, think locally, your neighborhood, and then branch out. Yeah, you understand?
Right.
Do work from home. You got to do
Absolutely.
work from home. Absolutely.
We have a few minutes left, so let's talk about solutions. Where do we go after the protest? Because it's, I mean, at some point the protests are going to end. I'm not saying it's going to be anytime soon, but at some point they're going to end. Where do we go from here?
Exactly.
Hawk, do you want to address that?
I'd love to hear from the other guests, and then I'd come on last.
Sure. Okay. Todd?
You need to attack the laws that protect police officers from excessive force, from criminal conduct, you know, is qualified immunity. I mean, if you don't lobby the courts, I mean, if you don't have a voice in a platform in the courtroom, then you just got to take what they give you. And I think that's essentially the problem. You know, we can march until the cows come home, but that ain't going to change nothing until you have a representative in the courtroom that's willing to speak for, I mean, again, I don't want to say nothing that's going to offend your viewers, but everybody that's black is not black.
Preach, brother.
You know, black is a culture.
Right.
Black is a sense of pride in how you were raised and how you were taught and how you feel. It's not the melanin in your skin. If you don't have the individuals that are part of that culture, then just having a damn black face is not enough. You know, we need somebody who gives a damn about poor people. And that don't necessarily have to be a black person. It can be a white person too. You know what I mean? But we need somebody that cares enough and that we can put in those positions of power to make those decisions. The reason why Trump is in office is people are not concerned about socialism. They're concerned about capitalism. America is a business.
Amen.
And what they care about is the money. I care about people. See, people mean more to me than property and always have been. You know what I mean? So as long as I can put a little food in my baby's stomach, I don't care about how big my house is or how nice my car is. I care about people. You know what I mean? So if we want to change these laws and we want to make police officers change their conduct, then they have to have something to lose. And that's the bottom line.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I'm always trying to figure things out, you know, not the greatest thinker, but I'm practical. I think that we don't know enough as a people who to vote for. Our lives are stressful. We don't have time to do the reading and the research, etc. I thought about this the other day. I said, when is it that Black people they're all together and we can speak to our flock and tell them what's going on and what measures should be taken? And I know there should be a separation of church and state and stuff, but we have this every Sunday in our churches where you have the community there. At some point, can we not carve out 10 minutes to say, this is going to be coming down, this law, or what's been, you know, what the government is thinking. This is a good thing or a bad thing. Think about this. You understand what I'm saying? We have to teach. You know what? We're stressed.
Right.
We're just trying to get dinner on the table. We're trying to take these kids. We ain't got no husbands. They locked all our men up. You understand what I'm saying? There's a lot going on. So now when do I have the time to figure out what should I do as a citizen to protect my community? I'm in church. No matter what's going on, I'm going to go to church. Can we take 10 minutes? I know it's supposed to be a separation of church and state and all that, but these are bad times.
I'm sorry, Jamie, I don't mean to cut you, but we've only got 2 more minutes. We have to finish up with Hawk. Hawk, I know that you guys, as far as the Black Lives Matter Greater New York, you guys are planning a protest on Sunday. Can you please tell us about that?
It's more of an information session.
Information, thank you.
Call to action, because we're presenting solutions. And I'd like to say, as a result of this, we've added one. We're going after qualified immunity. Thank you, Todd.
Amen.
Right. So we have qualified immunity. We have the I Can't Breathe Act. We're trying to prosecute police officers federally for falsifying documents. What you have is police officers who lie to cover from one another. But if they realize they will be prosecuted and sent to jail, you'll tear down that blue wall of silence. We want reparations. We want full employment for our people. We want to end the robbery by the capitalist white man of our Black and oppressed communities. We want decent and affordable housing on the school front. People who run our schools should look like the community. Our books should be redrafted to reflect Black history that started before slavery. We want to teach pride. We want to rebuild our schools. We will honor our Second Amendment right. And in open carry states, we will police the police. Okay. And then here in New York City, we will continue to police the police. We will continue to organize our people. We're pushing for Black-owned news outlets. There's so much happening, but we are presenting legislation and a plan. Okay. We have marched for 5 years to wake everybody up. So once everybody is awoke, I flew from Minnesota to California to go into a think tank to come up with these solutions. And on Sunday at 12 o'clock p.m. in Times Square, we are presenting solutions, and this is a family-friendly event. Our people need to come out, learn, and unite.
And how do we support this? How do we support this?
You can go to BlackLivesMatterGreaterNewYork.com. The information will be up today. You can BlackLivesMatterGreaterNY.com. The information will be up today. You can also go to our social media. We are in an organizing tizzy, right? Because there's a lot of people just take it to the streets, and I respect it. I love it, and I love it. And don't condemn looters, because those just misunderstood Black folk who are lashing out at this system. That's just me. I just say don't do it in your hood. And so we moving forward. And check our social media, Hawk.Newsome on Instagram. You'll see those flyers going up within the next hour. And, repealing 50A. You know that New York has a law that says that they don't have to release the criminal history or the allegations against police officers to the public. So we're pushing to repeal that as well. And my sister, those brothers who you see outside of your window, we drive around in our truck delivering food, hop out. Y'all need some masks? Y'all want some food? Y'all good?
I give it to you. I give it to them.
Right? Yeah, so I'm with you. I'm with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry. We are unfortunately out of time. I'm sorry. This has been a great discussion, and I pray that we can have more discussions like this in the future. Hawk, I want to thank you for being here with us today. God bless you. Stay safe. We are behind you in whatever we can do to push this legislation through.
Amen.
Please count on us. Jamie, as always, thank you for your wisdom.
Make sure we know what to do, what to vote for, but just make sure,
everybody yes. And Todd, thank you so much for being here. Can you give us where we can follow you and stay in, abreast of what you're doing as far as your representation of individuals in the Pittsburgh or the Pennsylvania area?
Absolutely. First, I want to say to my other panel, members, God bless you. Appreciate your fight. Hot man, I'm a fan, brother. I'm definitely a fan.
I am too.
I'm gonna look out to you personally, man, and shoot you something so we can connect. If any of you guys want to follow me, I'm at toddjhollis.com, and anything that I can help do to further the cause, any information you need relative to QI, Hot, I'm your guy, man. So just let me know.
That's excellent. And I'm Janine Hubble-Cox with It's All Legal 2, Sister to Sister 2.0. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. God bless and stay safe.
And stay in tune.
And stay in tune.
More to come.
Stay woke. Stay woke.